نرتجي الخير في صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. جموع الأحباب تنادي بإسعاد وبإرشاد. جموع الأحباب تنادي بإسعاد وبإرشاد. نحبك جمعا يا هادي، نحبك جمعا يا هادي. محمد حبك يجمعنا. جموع الأحباب تنادي بإسعاد وبإرشاد. جموع الأحباب تنادي بإسعاد وبإرشاد. نحبك جمعا يا هادي، نحبك جمعا يا هادي. محمد حبك يجمعنا، محمد حبك يجمعنا، محمد حبك يجمعنا. هل شموس قد لاحت لنا أم بدور؟ هل شموس قد لاحت لنا أم بدور؟ بل ضياء المصطفى بل ضياء المصطفى فاستضاءت به مكة في سرور، في سرور، في أمان. فاستضاءت به مكة في سرور، في سرور، في أمان. أزكى البرايا يا حبيبي طرا نلت من
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين، وعلى جميع إخوانه من النبيين والمرسلين، وآل كل وصحب كل ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah raise the rank of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and protect his nation from that which he fears for them. In our topic for tonight is a very important topic that Muslims, especially in Australia, ask about it, which is how to determine the beginning and the end of the month of Ramadan. They also get confused when they hear statements from here and there, 2 weeks before the coming of the month, stating that the month will start on that specific day. And because it is our duty as Muslims to explain to people and remind them to adhere to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his teachings, we made this session specifically to talk about this case and to answer your questions if you have anything regarding this matter. Unfortunately, there is a new bad innovation that was innovated a few years ago, or in the last 2 decades, to be more specific. And that bad innovation is requesting of people to rely on astronomical calculations to determine the beginning and the end of the month, and to abandon the method of the Prophet ﷺ, which is to watch the crescent of Ramadan after the sunset of the 29th day of Sha'ban. If they see it, the following day will be the first day of Ramadan. If they don't, however, they continue Sha'ban 30 days. All those who lived in Islamic regions know this method clearly, and they wait eagerly to hear the announcement of the beginning of the month on that night. However, this bad innovation wants Muslims to abandon this method and to rely on astronomical calculations, claiming that by doing so they are helping the Muslims to know the beginning of the month 2 weeks prior to its coming. For that reason, and because it is our obligation to advise people, we chose to talk about this topic for tonight. And let those who relied on astronomy and calculations to determine the beginning of the month of Ramadan know that they have contradicted many of the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we are going to show you. If the Muslim just reads the section on fasting in any of the famous books of Hadith, Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Al-Nasa'i, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, At-Tirmidhi, Musnad al-Imam Ahmad, any of these books, there is a chapter about fasting, and in it there is a section about how can we determine the beginning and the end of the month of Ramadan. And one will be astonished and will question how this adverse group will face the Prophet on the day of judgment, when they claim to have followed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but yet they have contradicted his hadith and rejected it. For those who seek the truth, the following are some of the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding this matter. I'll mention a few of them. Al-Bukhari, Muslim, and others narrated from the root of Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, الشهر 29 ليلة فلا تصوموا حتى تروه فإن غم عليكم فأكملوا العدة 30. This means the lunar month is 29 nights. So do not fast until you sight the crescent. However, if it is cloudy, that means on the day you are watching the western horizon to see the crescent, if it is cloudy, then complete the count to 30 days. Meaning finish Sha'ban as 30 days, then start fasting. Although the Prophet ﷺ made this clear statement, those who oppose said, we are going to fast whether or not we sight the crescent, whether or not it is cloudy, as long as they were instructed by the astronomer. Another expression of this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ narrated by Abu Dawood says, الشهر 29 فلا تصوموا حتى تروه ولا تفطروا حتى تروه فإن غم عليكم فاقدروا له 30. This means the lunar month is 29. So do not fast until you sight the crescent, and do not end your fast until you sight the crescent. However, if it is cloudy, then complete the count to 30 days. An-Nasa'i narrated through the route of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الْهِلَالَ فَصُومُوا وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُ فَأَفْطِرُوا فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَأَكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ ثَلَاثِينَ. This means fast when you sight the crescent, and end your fast when you sight the crescent. If it is cloudy, then complete your fast to 30 days. In the Muwatta of Imam Malik radiyallahu anhu, and in the Musnad of Imam El-Shafie radiyallahu anhu, it is mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال ولا تفطروا حتى تروه فإن غم عليكم فأكملوا العدة ثلاثين. Which means do not fast unless you sight the crescent, and do not end your fast unless you sight it. If it is cloudy, then complete the count to 30 days. The adverse group said overlooking sighting is not determinable, even though mentioned by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they said to overlook the sighting is not a big problem according to them, is not detrimental. Rather, what is detrimental for them is overlooking the saying of the mathematicians and the astronomers. Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, Imam Muslim in his Sahih, Ibn Majah and An-Nasa'i in their Sunan related the narration through Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الْهِلَالَ فَصُومُوا وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُوهُ فَأَفْطِرُوا فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَصُومُوا ثَلَاثِينَ يَوْمًا. This means if you see the crescent, then commence fasting. And that's referring to the month of Ramadan. And if you see the crescent, then end your fasting. If it is cloudy, then fast 30 days. Another hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari, Muslim, and Imam Ahmad, Abu Dawood, and Nasa'i, they all narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, إِنَّا أُمَّةٌ أُمِّيَّةٌ لَا نَكْتُبْ وَلَا نَحْسُبْ الشَّهْرُ هَكَذَا وَهَكَذَا. Which means we do not rely on writings or calculations to determine the beginning or the end of the month. The month is either 29 or 30 days. Now listen carefully. Al-Qadi Iyad, who died in the year 544 after Hijrah, in his book Ikmal al-Mu'lim بفوائد Muslim, explained the aforementioned hadith by saying, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not mean that they were ignorant of which day was the 29th and which was the 30th, nor he denied their knowledge of such calculations. So they were aware of these calculations. Rather, he gave them a rule about observing the moon to begin fasting and to end fasting. By doing so, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and remember this, as narrated by Al-Qadi Iyad, by doing this, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not allow them to adopt the methodology of calculation relied upon by the non-Muslims. So what did the scholars of the four schools of Islamic jurisprudence say about this case? All Muslims agree that it is the duty of the knowledgeable and the role of the scholars to determine the beginning and the end of the month of Ramadan, and that only they hold the authority in such determination. The scholars of the four schools of Islamic law agreed that the basis for determining the beginning of Ramadan is as follows. Either citing the crescent, meaning the crescent is visually observed after the sunset of the 29th day of Sha'ban, in which case the following day will be the first day of Ramadan. That's if they see it. Or the crescent is not sighted on that night. Not to assume that it will be sighted or not sighted 2 weeks before. Keep that in mind. If the crescent is not sighted on that night, then the next day will be the 30th of Sha'ban, and the following day will be the beginning of Ramadan. Muslims throughout the world implemented this practice as it was in accordance with the ruling of the highly knowledgeable scholars. Moreover, they stated that the reliance is on the above mentioned method of determination and that no attention is to be given to the sayings of the mathematicians and astronomers, nor are their sayings to be relied upon. And now I'll show you some of these books from the 4 schools of Islamic jurisprudence. So you know that it's not a case of difference amongst the scholars of Islam. Rather, it is a scholarly consensus. We'll show you some of these books. Now this book is called Radd al-Muhtar ala al-Dur al-Mukhtar. And he is a Hanafi scholar. In this book, as you can see, he mentioned his saying, وَلَا عِبْرَةَ بِالْمُنَجِّمِ أي بقوله فلا يجب به الصوم ولا يجوز. وَلَا عِبْرَةَ بِالْمُنَجِّمِ, meaning there is no consideration that is given to astronomers or astrologers by their saying fasting does not become incumbent upon the Muslims to fast. Not only that, he said, وَلَا يَجُوز, meaning it's not permissible for them to rely on them to fast or to fast Ramadan. Also, that's Hanafi. We'll take from another book. This book is كشاف القناع عن متن الإقناع. This is for a Hanbali scholar, Al-Imam Al-Buhuti Al-Hanbali. That's volume 2. What did he mention in it? Something very, very important. Now, if you can read Arabic, that would be fine. If you can't read Arabic, I'll explain it. He said, وَإِنَّ نَوَاهُ, meaning if a person were to intend to fast, يوم الثلاثين من شعبان, the 30th of Sha'ban, بلا مستند شرعي, without referring to a valid reason, من رؤية هلاله, so he didn't see the crescent, أو إكمال شعبان, so he didn't continue Sha'ban 30 days, أو حيلولة غيم أو قتر ونحوه. So it's not that no one was able to see the crescent, so they continued Sha'ban 30 days. He said, كأن صامه لحساب. Rather, he fasted that day based on calculations ونجوم. ولو كثرت إصابتهما. So even if in many cases they coincide with the truth, with the reality. أو مع صحو فبان منه. So he had the intention to fast the 30th of Sha'ban, but he was not relying on a valid reason. he relied on the calculations of the astronomers. Listen to what he said. This is Imam al-Buhuti al-Hanbali. He said, فَبَانَ مِنْهُ, then it turned up to be from Ramadan, لَمْ يُجْزِئْهُ صَوْمُهُ. His fasting is not valid. Why? He said, لِعَدَمِ اسْتِنَادِهِ لِمَا يُعَوَّلُ عَلَيْهِ شَرْعًا. Because he did not rely on a valid rule. Rather, he relied on the calculations of the astronomers, which are not accepted in our religion. Also, we'll show you from another book. From the statements of the scholars. And we intended to show you so you can refer to them if you want. Imam al-Nawawi, in his book Rawdat al-Talibin, he mentioned this case as well. That's Shafi'i, as we explained. So Imam al-Nawawi is Shafi'i, Ibn Abidin is Hanafi, Al-Buhuti is Hanbali, and Shaykh Ahmad al-Dardir is Maliki as well. And we'll show you some of these proofs, inshallah, from those statements. We'll show you the reference so you can refer to it, the book, the page, inshallah azza wa jal, to know that it's a case of scholarly consensus. It's not a matter of difference in opinion. In the Shafi'i school, An-Nawawi died in 676 after Hijrah. May Allah have mercy on him. Documented the correct ruling and confirmed it. He said in Rawdat al-Talibin, the results of the calculations made by the astronomers do not make it obligatory to fast, neither upon themselves nor upon others. That's from the Shafi'i. From the Hanbali, that's Al-Hanafi, Al-Haskafi, Al-Hanafi. The author of Ad-Durr al-Mukhtar said, when determining the time for fasting, no consideration for the saying of those who calculate should be given. This is in accordance with the Hanafi madhab. Then Ibn Abidin, we showed you what he mentioned as well in that photo of that book. The Maliki will choose some of those scholars. That's Shaykh Muhammad al-Laysh al-Maliki, who died in the year 1299, and the former Mufti of Egypt quoted Ibn Rushd al-Maliki's statement on the consensus and confirmed it. Also in the Hanbali school, we mentioned what Imam al-Buhuti mentioned, and we explained it. So what does that mean? That means it's a matter of consensus. All the scholars from the four schools of Islamic jurisprudence agreed that the only way to determine the beginning and the end of the month is after the sunset of the 29th day of Sha'ban. We watch the western horizon. If we see the crescent, then the following day will be the beginning of Ramadan. If we don't see it, then the following day will be the 30th of Sha'ban, and the day after will be the beginning of Ramadan. It's a very simple method. However, the calculations of the astronomers are complicated. Not only that, it happened in many years that they do not agree on something. Plus, what they can work on by their calculations to determine the birth of the new moon. So they might say, based on our calculations, the birth of the new moon will be on that day at that time. So it could be in the morning, could be at 10 o'clock. So this does not determine the beginning of the month of Ramadan. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ said, Sumu li ru'yatih. I want you to memorize it. He didn't say, Sumu li wiladatih, for the birth of the moon. He said, Sumu li ru'yatih. Now, those astronomers, based on their calculations, would say the moon, the birth of the new moon will be on that day at that time. Then whether Muslims are going to be able to see the crescent after sunset or not, they don't know, because this is from the unforeseen, from ilm al-ghaib, whether it's going to be clear or not. So even if they say there is a high chance to be seen, this does not determine the beginning of the month, because Muslims may go to watch it and the moon will be in the horizon, above the horizon, but because it's cloudy, as the Prophet ﷺ said, then we need to continue 30 days of Sha'ban. So they cannot determine whether Muslims are able to see the crescent on that night or not. Why? Because that's from the unforeseen. This case is very important. But now for someone to claim, as we've seen in some statements circulated on social media, that already 2 weeks ago they confirmed that the beginning of the month will be on Thursday, and they blatantly say that we relied on the birth of the new moon, such a method is not adopted by any of the scholars from any school. No scholar, whether Shafi or Hanafi or Maliki or Hanbali, had ever mentioned that you can rely on the calculations of the astronomers when they determine the birth of the new moon. So don't be fooled by this group and follow them blindly, because they are not following the Prophet ﷺ. Rather, our advice to you is as follows, and that's based on the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. So based on this, which means you are the best nation ever brought to people, bidding the lawful and forbidding the unlawful, and believing in Allah. So it is clear to every mindful person that worthless sayings are passed around by those who are against the 4 Islamic schools. These sayings are only a group of words with no content. It is a mirage that the thirsty may think of as water, but upon reaching it finds nothing more than an illusion. Our advice to every Muslim is to abide by the sayings mentioned by the fuqaha, scholars of the 4 schools. The Muslim nation unanimously agreed on the high rank and integrity of those scholars. Let the Muslim learn the rules of fasting before the month of Ramadan comes by studying under someone who possesses both knowledge and trustworthiness, and is someone who himself has acquired the knowledge from someone trustworthy and knowledgeable, and so on, with a continuous chain until they reach the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our advice to Muslims in every city is to dispatch a group to watch for the crescent after the sunset of the 29th day of Sha'ban. If the crescent is sighted, then the next day will be Ramadan. If not sighted, then they continue Sha'ban 30 days and they start fasting after that. Furthermore, if sighting the crescent was confirmed as per religious rules in a country far away from another, meaning there is a different time for sunrise and sunset between these two countries, the scholars applied two methods in that case. Imam Al-Shafie radiyallahu anhu said only the countries that are close enough that they have the same time for sunrise and sunset would follow one another. But the majority of the scholars, the Hanafi, the Maliki, and the Hanbali, those three mentioned that if fasting Ramadan is determined, meaning the beginning of fasting is determined in the east, then the people of the west must follow them. So these are two methods that people may follow. Either what they call it local moon sighting, only for that region. And based on that, let me clarify something. Because Australia is a big country, and between Sydney and Perth is like between Lebanon and Germany. So how many countries are there between Lebanon and Germany? So they don't have the same sunrise and same sunset. So they won't follow one another. Australia is a big country, and based on the saying of Imam Al-Shafii, people in Sydney won't follow people in Perth. Based on that, it's better for them to follow the global moon sighting. If it is confirmed in any Islamic country, then they would follow them in this practice. On the other hand, those who rely on the calculations of the astronomers and the mathematicians have not adopted any valid method. Why? Because how does Ramadan start? When the crescent is sighted. It's very simple. Not when the crescent is born. If you ask any astronomer around the world, can you determine if after 1 week or 2 weeks, if the moon will be sighted? He won't be able to answer you. Simply he will say to you that depends on the weather. So there is a high chance if it's clear sky, he might be able to see it. So they won't be able to tell you. They can tell you the moon will be born on that day at that time. Yeah, but this does not determine the beginning of the month. I hope that I have clarified this case clearly to you, inshallah azza wa jal. And if you have questions, inshallah, we'll try to answer these questions in the comments, inshallah. Yeah, some people say the closest country is Indonesia, for instance, or Malaysia, and not Saudi Arabia or Lebanon. Yeah, that's true. Even, we know Malaysia is closer than Lebanon, closer than Saudi Arabia. But if you want to follow Malaysia, based on what? There is a time difference between Sydney and Malaysia. About over 3 hours of difference between here and Malaysia. If you want to follow Malaysia, then Islamically you are following the global moon sighting because you are not in the same region. Then that makes you obligated to follow, if any of the Islamic countries around the world, whether Lebanon or Syria or Palestine or Jordan or even in Africa or Saudi Arabia or any part of the world, any of them have confirmed. If they have confirmed, then you have to follow them. Some people I know, they get that's very sad. We know like Australia is a multicultural country. Some people came from Lebanon, some of them from Pakistan, some of them from India, some of them from Malaysia, Indonesia. you find some people, they say, we follow our country, or from Turkey, for instance. That's not the case. So that's not the case. It's either you follow the local moon sighting, that's, as I mentioned, only in that region where they have, as the scholars of Imam Al-Shafie mentioned, the same time for sunrise and sunset. If you are taken with this, there is no problem. But if you want to follow Indonesia, Malaysia, then the same thing applies to following Lebanon, Syria, Saudi, and other regions. So it's the same thing. Yeah, someone is asking, it's outside the topic, but we'll answer quickly, inshallah. If someone has some days from the past Ramadans that she hasn't fasted, or for several years, they have to make them up. So they are still Islamically liable to fast these days. So now if Ramadan has started, after this Ramadan, they can continue making up whatever they missed of the previous Ramadan, inshallah. Yeah, up to now, some is asking, has the moon been sighted? Yeah, in Australia, we send the groups to different regions in all states to see, but today, as it was clear, it was cloudy, so the moon was not sighted yet here. But that does not mean that we stop up to here. As we told you, we take with the majority of the scholars, Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, and we wait. So even if you have to wait for a few hours, that's fine, until we announce, inshallah, either the beginning of Ramadan tomorrow or after tomorrow. It's very simple. If you think you have work, you are tired, you can go to sleep and wake up before dawn, and you will get the news, inshallah, about this. Yeah, according to Imam Al-Shafie radiallahu anhu, if a lady doesn't make up the days she missed from previous Ramadan, she delayed and delayed and delayed for no reason, then next Ramadan comes, she has to pay an expiation for each day, which is a mud. Mud meaning a hand, every size hands cupped together, filled with the most common staple food of that region. So if it's wheat, which is valid in all countries, or rice in some countries and the like, for each day. So, and this will be repeated. So let us say in the first year she didn't make up that day, then she has to pay an expiation. If she defers it till the year after and Ramadan comes, now she has to pay 2 expiations for that day. That's according to Imam Al-Shafii radiallahu anhu. However, other scholars other than Shafi'i did mention that she doesn't have to pay the expiation. She needs only to make up the days. Yeah, once the beginning of Ramadan is determined, someone is asking, and he knows tomorrow is Ramadan, that's when he puts the intention in his heart to fast tomorrow of Ramadan. But if someone were to put that hesitant intention because he is unsure if tomorrow is Ramadan or not, now making that intention while being doubtful about the beginning of Ramadan is not sufficient, is invalid. But let me explain this. In the Hanafi school, there is a facility, which is you have up to Zuhr time. Up to Zuhr time. That means if you sleep, let us say, then you wake up in the morning and you find out that Ramadan has started and you haven't eaten or drunk anything, then what should you do? Put the intention to fast that day of Ramadan and it is valid. That's according to Imam Abu Hanifa, which makes it very simple to you, inshaAllah Azza wa Jal. So we're trying to answer as many questions as we can from different platforms. Insha'Allah Azza wa Jal, we meet our brothers and sisters around the world, Insha'Allah Azza wa Jal. Now we are located, some are asking, we are located in Australia. That's the far southeast. But we are close to all of you with our hearts. Inshallah, we remain connected with our hearts. Once the hearts are connected, these distances make no meaning. Some are asking, is it possible that tomorrow is Ramadan? Yes, because Muslim countries now, check if you want. I want you to check this. Now call Lebanon and tell them. They will tell you today, meaning Tuesday after sunset, we will wait, and they might announce that tomorrow is Ramadan. Same in Syria, Palestine, and Jordan. Same in all these Islamic countries. They don't issue like all these Islamic countries. That's why I'm warning you. Do not listen to those who wants you to buy the bad innovation. To tell you, yeah, we can tell you when Ramadan is going to start 2 weeks before. Don't listen to them. Tell them all the Islamic countries, they don't do this. They wait until the sunset of the 29th day of Sha'ban. So now, maybe they have midday, some of them in the afternoon. So once it becomes sunset, they will have people watching the western horizon. If they see the crescent, they will announce it. And that's when we will inform you, inshallah, whether tomorrow or after tomorrow is the beginning of Ramadan. فإذا سألخص باختصار إن شاء الله عز وجل ما ذكرت باللغة العربية للفائدة أيضا. ذكرنا أحاديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والتي من صحيح البخاري ومسلم وأبي داود والنسائي والترمذي ومسند الإمام أحمد وغير ذلك من الكتب، أن الأحاديث كثيرة في بيان قول النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام: صوموا لرؤيته وأفطروا لرؤيته فإن غم عليكم فأكملوا عدة شعبان 30. وعلى هذا الدول الإسلامية تتابع وتراقب وتبعث لجان وتنتظر، ثم بعد ذلك تعلن. هذه هي الطريقة. ولكن تفاجأنا من مجموعة في أستراليا تريد من المسلمين أن يتركوا هذه الطريقة وأن يعتمدوا على أقوال الفلكيين في ولادة القمر، مع أن النبي لم يقل صوموا لولادته، بل قال صوموا لرؤيته. وهذا دليل واضح على أن البداية تكون بالرؤية. ثم أيضا تجرؤوا بأن أعلنوا قبل أيام كثيرة من بداية الشهر أن بداية رمضان يكون في اليوم الفلاني. كل من يقول لك رمضان سيكون في اليوم الفلاني قبل أن يراقب الهلال، قل له هذه ليست طريقة رسول الله، ولا طريقة الخلفاء الراشدين، ولا طريقة العلماء ولا الحكام الذين مضوا على مئات القرون. وإذا كان يعتقد هو بزعمه أنه جاء بشيء يعني لم يهتد إليه السابقون، كأنه يقول كل هؤلاء جهلوا هذه الطريقة وهو الآن اكتشفها. مع أن العلماء، وذكرنا من نصوص العلماء بالمذهب الشافعي والحنفي والمالكي والحنبلي، ذكرنا كل نصوص العلماء أنهم قالوا لا يجوز الاعتماد على أقوال الفلكيين لمعرفة بداية الشهر وانتهاء الشهر، لأن النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام قال لا نكتب ولا نحسب الشهر هكذا وهكذا، يعني لا نعتمد على الحساب. معناه الحساب كان معروفا في ذلك الوقت بين جماعة قليلة من الناس، والآن الحساب معروف لدى جماعة قليلة من الناس، يعني لم يتغير الأمر عما كان عليه، بل الأمر هو. ولكن النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام لم يرشدهم إلى اعتماد الفلكيين، بل أرشدهم إلى المراقبة العيانية، وهذه هي الطريقة الصحيحة السليمة. So Ramadan could be tomorrow, could be after tomorrow. Could be tomorrow, could be after tomorrow. And that is contingent to the case if the crescent will be sighted in other Islamic countries. So you may wait, stay awake and wait until it is announced. We are going, inshallah Azza wa Jal, to put it on our platform and announce, inshallah Azza wa Jal, in the Muslim radio. Or, inshallah Azza wa Jal, you may sleep and wake up, let us say 4 o'clock. And this time is waqt al-sahar. That's a very good time for making dua. You can pray, make dua before Fajr, and see if it's going to be announced or not. So be patient, but you know for sure you are following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the majority of the scholars. And no scholar, I'm telling you, no scholar from the 4 schools of Islamic jurisprudence said that they can rely on the calculations of the astronomers. Moreover, the Mufti of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Muhammad Al-Laysh Al-Maliki, made a very clear fatwa, and he mentioned that if the ruler wants people to rely on astronomers for the beginning and the end of Ramadan, he should not be followed. And don't be fooled and say, it's not my problem, it's the problem of that person. So it's gonna be, they say in Arabic, in his neck, meaning he's gonna carry the responsibility on the day of judgment. He's gonna carry the responsibility, true, and you're gonna carry the responsibility as well. Because Allah Ta'ala said in the Quran, and listen and think about the meaning of this verse. إذ تبرأ الذين اتبعوا من الذين اتبعوا ورأوا العذاب وتقطعت بهم الأسباب وقال الذين اتبعوا لو أن لنا كرة فنتبرأ منهم كما تبرأوا منا كذلك يريهم الله أعمالهم حسرات عليهم وما هم بخارجين من النار. Very simple. The followed rulers and leaders will disown their followers on the day of judgment. So the followers would request, they ask if they can return to this world so they can disown the leaders as they disown them. But Allah mentioned that this won't happen and they both will be in hellfire. So it's your responsibility to follow the truth, not to say blindly I'm following this person and he's going to carry the responsibility. No. I think we answered most of the questions, and because this is like a trial broadcast, to be honest. We have a new system, new setup, and we're starting this, inshallah. We will have sessions with you in Ramadan, inshallah. For now, every Saturday and Sunday, inshallah, Azza wa Jal, after Taraweeh prayer, we'll make sessions and we'll answer your questions, inshallah, Azza wa Jal. And also, inshallah Azza wa Jal, we'll have every Friday at night i'tikaf, and we will be reading in a very important book and will be broadcasted as well. It's called Al-Shama'il al-Muhammadiyya, the traits of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Honestly, when this book is read, you feel with tranquility and peace, inshallah Azza wa Jal. نعم إن شاء الله تعالى. البعض يسأل عن موضوع إغاثة إخواننا وإعانتهم. الحمد لله عز وجل قمنا بعدة حملات وما زال الأمر جاريا لمساعدة المنكوبين في الزلزال الأخير في سوريا وفي تركيا، ووصلت المساعدات على قدر المستطاع. ونحن مع بداية هذا الشهر الكريم نحث جميع المسلمين على التبرع والتصدق وإعانة المحتاجين، لأن النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام قال: أفضل الصدقة صدقة في رمضان. فمن كان يستطيع، من كان موسرا فلا يقصرن في هذا، فليساعد من أقاربه، من أحبابه، من معارفه، وممن لا يعرفهم أيضا، ولكن يرسل المال إلى أناس ثقات يعرف منهم أنهم سيوصلون المال إلى المستحقين. نسأل الله تعالى أن يرفع البلاء عن إخواننا في كل بقاع الأرض، وأن يكون هذا الشهر إن شاء الله يحمل في طياته الأمن والأمان والسلام والتوفيق لما يحب ربنا ويرضى إن شاء الله تبارك وتعالى. والله تعالى أعلم وأحكم.